Guys, this is going to be the first part of my lecture on computing and understanding averages. So let's take a look at our chapter objectives. So we've got quite a few things that we are going to cover in these lectures that I've got for today. We're going to understand measures of central tendency. We're going to learn about the average function. We're going to learn about the mode function, as well as the median function. And then last, we're going to talk about the data analysis tools, as well as how to select a measure of central tendency. So when we talk about measures of central tendency, this is an unfamiliar term to us. We tend to think of the word average when we think of measures of central tendency. So the average is one value that best represents a set of scores. And so some examples that we have are mean, median, and mode. And this is going to be what we focus on for this chapter. So when we think about mean, median, and mode, some examples are things like the average age of OTC students in this semester is 19. So that average, that mean, represents that population of students at OTC this semester. So this video is going to focus on the mean. Now the mean is sometimes represented by the letter M as a capital letter M. It's also sometimes represented by an X with a bar over it, but for this class I'm going to use the capital letter M. Now, going back to something we've talked about before, is we've talked about sample sizes and population sizes. So the sample size is represented by a lowercase n, and population size is represented by an uppercase N. So one of the funny things about statistics is that we have all these little abbreviations that we'll be learning throughout the class. So I want you guys to keep this in mind as we go through. So for example, if I said capital letter N equals 15,000, that means there are 15,000 people in my population. So for example, the one I mentioned before is OTC students. There's roughly 15,000 OTC students this semester. Now the sample size is a lowercase n, and so we could say something like lowercase n equals 21. So let's say I have my sample of students that are just in my classes. So that's roughly a sample size of about 150. So my capital letter N equals 15,000, lowercase n equals 150. That's my sample size. So when we talk about samples and populations, we'll still use this capital letter M to talk about the mean. So my mean population size could be 19, my mean sample size could be 21. Okay? Now this is also called the arithmetic mean, so you may have heard that term in your math class or maybe another science class at some point. So the textbook definition is the center point where all values on one side of the mean are equal in weight to all the values on the other side of the mean. So it's that center point for the values, so the actual numbers for the actual, in my example, for the actual ages. So my sample size, if my average age for my sample size is 21 and my average age for my population is 19, my sample size is a little bit, or my sample is a little bit older than my population, okay? Now why is this? The mean is very sensitive to some extreme scores. So in my classes this semester, I have some non-traditional students that are a little older than those traditional age college students. So because I have those non-traditional students, that is making my sample mean a little higher, to be 21 instead of 19. So in the next segment, we're going to talk about how to calculate the mean in Excel. Okay guys, this is going to be how to calculate the mean in Excel. So this is a data set that I have in our class. It's called Mean and Median Data Set. That we're going to use for both the mean and the median, but for right now in this video we're going to focus on the mean. So I'm going to use it to show you how to calculate the mean in Excel. So let me get this a little bit bigger. Okay. So I'm going to type here, because I'm going to use this for multiple things. I'm going to type what I'm doing. Now there's multiple ways to calculate this data set. So this data set has days and then class 1, class 2, and class 3. And this could be the number of times that a student raised their hand, or the number of students that were in attendance, or something like that. So it's just some kind of fake data that I found to help illustrate this. So for the mean, as we talked about in the Excel basics, if you want Excel to calculate something, you have to start with an equal sign. That tells Excel, okay, we're getting ready to calculate things, get ready. So the mean, if you start typing MEAN, it's not going to give you anything, because Excel does not call the mean, quote unquote, mean. Excel calls mean average. So if you type average, you'll see the description returns the average, or the arithmetic mean, of its arguments, which can be numbers, names, arrays, or references that contain numbers. So I'm going to double click this when it's blue, and then I'm going to highlight what I want to make the average. Now this is really similar to what we did also in the Excel basics when we worked with functions. So this is just a function that is specifically tied to calculating the mean. Okay, so you see my mean is 27.4 for class 1, and I can drag this over. We did this in Excel basics as well, and you can see that the average updates for each column. So that's the mean. Let's say I want to go over here and I want to calculate the average for each day, and I can do that, and I can do the same thing where I copy down. Now you'll notice here, this gives me a whole bunch of decimal points. So what I would like you to do is to either use the drop down and format it to be a number, and that will get rid of those decimals to take it down to 2 decimals, or use the little decimals to take it down to 2 decimals. These don't need to be changed because they're already at 1 decimal. So if I say calculate the average for each day, that's what this is. But if I say calculate the average for each class, that's what this is going to be. Ooh, I can spell. Okay, so carefully read the directions to figure out what average you're supposed to be finding. If it's the average for each class, which is the columns, or if it's the average for each day. Okay, so that's all for this video. In the next video, we're going to be talking about median.